Welcome back. We're now ready to create our own custom pawn class. Now, before we get started, I want to point out something that you may have noticed with your point lights if you have some. Some of them have a little red X. Now, if we select one of those point lights in the details panel, you'll see that there's a mobility property, and it can be set to static, stationary, or movable. Now, static means it will never change throughout the game. Stationary means it won't move, but it could change its other properties like intensity. And movable means that it can move while the game is running, and that's the most computationally expensive type of light. Now, because my point lights are just here to light up the walls, they don't need to move, so I can select each one of them and choose static. And that will get rid of those red X's. So I'm just going to quickly do that for all my point lights that I can see. Okay, I think I got them all. Now we're ready to make our pawn class. Now I'd like to get back into my testing level. So I'm going to go to Maps and open testing level, saving my level so that I can work in here in a nice, well-lit environment. And we're going to make a new blueprint class based on the pawn class. So for this, we're going to go to our blueprints folder and make a new folder called BotPawn. B-O-T-P-A-W-N. Let's go into that folder, right-click and make a new blueprint class. And finally, we're going to create a new blueprint based on pawn. We can see in the description, a pawn is an actor that can be possessed and receive input from a controller. That's what we're going to learn about in this section. So let's make our new pawn class, and I'm going to call this BP_BotPawn. And we can double click on it to open it up, and we'll see that it looks a lot like a regular actor blueprint. We even have a default scene route, we have an event graph, we have that construction script, which we still haven't gotten into yet. So it's very much like an actor. In fact, a pawn is an actor. Remember inheritance? Now, this is a pretty empty pawn. We haven't really programmed any functionality for it. We haven't given it any components. It's completely invisible in the game, but we can still use this pawn. In fact, the only reason we get the default pawn when we start playing a game is because we have not assigned our own pawn to be spawned in. But now that we have our BP bot pawn, we can set that in our own game mode, which we're using for our project, right? So we can go into our blueprints folder and go into game and find our BP bad bot game mode. And in the details panel, we can find the default pawn class. And as we can see, it's set to the default pawn engine class, but we can open the dropdown and we can choose our own BP bot pawn. We can compile and save that. And now if we go back and press play, we're going to be possessing our bot pawn. And frustratingly, you'll find that if we click in the viewport to engage and press WASD, we cannot move. We can't even look around with our mouse. That's because the bot pawn is completely empty. It has no default behavior. That's something the default pawn provided for us. We can hold Shift and hit F1 to get our mouse cursor and check out the outliner and see that we do have a BP bot pawn in the world. We no longer have a default pawn. And of course, that's because we're using bad bot game mode, which has our pawn designated as the default pawn class to spawn in. So in a way, we've made one step forward and two steps back, right? We've learned how to create our own custom pawn and assign it as the default pawn class in our game mode, but our bot pawn is basic and has no movement capabilities, no visual representation, none of that. But that's okay because it's a blank slate and we can now program the type of movement that we want to see for our bot pawn. And we can add our own custom visual representation by adding components. So we're going to get started doing all that in the next video when we add some visual representation and start making our bot pawn a little bit more specialized. Excellent job. I'll see you soon.